Before delving into today's video, I want to extend a massive thank you to Rowan Laverne for suggesting this topic. If you have any suggestions you'd like to share, please feel free to do so in the comments. But for now, let's get started with today's video. The Yuba County Five were a group of young men from Yuba County, California, United States, each with mild intellectual disabilities or psychiatric conditions, who went missing after attending a college basketball game at California State University, Chico, also known as Chico State, on the night of February 24th, 1978. The group consisted of Bill Sterling, who was 29 at the time, Jack Huett, 24 at the time, Ted Weiher, 32 at the time, Jack Madruga, 30, and Gary Mathias, 25. Background information reveals that Gary Mathias, diagnosed with schizophrenia while serving in the US Army that led to his discharge, was a member of a close-knit group known as the Boys, which included Sterling, Huett, Weiher and Madruga. They all shared a love for sports, particularly basketball. On the night of their disappearance, they had set out for Chico to support the UC Davis basketball team. After the game, they stopped at Bears Market in downtown Chico to buy snacks and drinks before vanishing without a trace. Several days after their disappearance, their car, a 1969 Mercury Montego, owned by Madruga, was found abandoned in a remote area of Plumas National Forest, far from their intended route. Despite being in good working order, the car was stuck in a snowpack, raising questions about why they had abandoned it. Months later, in June 1978, 4 of the men's bodies were discovered. Ted Weiher was found in a US Forest Service trailer miles away from the car. He had apparently survived for months before succumbing to starvation and hypothermia. The remains of Jack Madruga, Bill Sterling, and Jack Huett were also found nearby, having been picked clean by scavenging animals. The discovery of the car, along with the significant distance between the car and where the bodies were found, led to suspicions of foul play. A local man came forward claiming to have heard and seen people around his car on the same night the Mercury was found, further deepening the mystery. Joseph Shons came forward with a bizarre story about the night of February the 24th. According to CrimeWire, Shons had been driving on the same remote road to check on his cabin in the forest when he had also got stuck in a snowbank. He then suffered a heart attack while trying to free his vehicle and collapsed in pain. Unable to move, around 11:30 p.m, he noticed headlights on the road. He claimed that several men got out of the car, along with a woman who was holding a baby. He called for help, and the group stopped talking and disappeared. Sean said he saw flashlight beams again about 2 hours later, but no one ever came to his assistance. When Shons recovered enough to attempt to walk down the mountain for help, Madruga's car was in the spot where he'd seen a group of men the night before. It's unclear if Shons actually saw the Yuba County Five, if they really had a woman and a baby with them, or if he had simply imagined the entire encounter in a pain-induced daze. His story only added to the mystery surrounding the case. However, it was all that investigators had to work with, at least until the snow melted in the spring. The other notable report was from a woman who worked at a store in the small town of Brownsville, 30 miles, or 48 kilometers, from where the car had been abandoned, which they would have reached had they continued down the road. On March the 3rd, the woman who saw flyers that had been distributed with men's pictures and information about a $1,200 reward the family had put up, told deputies that 4 of them had stopped at the store in a red pickup truck the day after the disappearance. The store owner corroborated her account. Investigations into their disappearance yielded puzzling findings. The car contained evidence of their presence, including wrappers from the store in Chico, basketball game programs, and a road map of California. However, the circumstances of their abandonment and the distance from their intended route raised more questions than answers. Most puzzling to the investigators was how Weiher had come to his fate. No fires had been set in the trailer's fireplace, despite an ample supply of matches and paperback novels to use as kindling. Heavy forestry clothing, which could have kept the men warm, also remained where it had been stored. A dozen C ration cans from a storage shed outside had been opened and their contents consumed, but a locker in the same shed that held an even greater assortment of dehydrated foods, enough to keep all 5 men fed for a year, if that had been necessary, had not even been opened. Similarly, another shed nearby held a butane tank with a valve that, had it been opened, would have fed the trailer's heating system. On June the 4th, 1978, motorcyclists exploring the trails of Plumas National Forest came across a Forest Service trailer in the woods 20 miles from where Madruga's car had been discovered. Curious, they opened the door to explore, and were greeted with a grisly scene. The body of Ted Weiher was stretched out on a bed in the trailer. He was wrapped in sheets, and his feet were severely frostbitten. Weiher's body was emaciated, and the length of his beard suggested that he'd been alive for 2 to 3 months after disappearing. It also appeared that Weiher had not been alone in the trailer, and that Mathias and possibly Huett had also been in there. Mathias's trainers were in the trailer, and the C rations had been opened with a P38 can opener, with which only Mathias or Madruga would have been familiar with from their military service. Mathias, his feet perhaps also swollen from frostbite, could have decided to put Weiher's shoes on instead if he had to venture outside. The sheets all over Weiher's body also suggested that one of the others had been there with him, as his gangrenous feet would have been too much pain for him to pull them over his body himself. The next day, investigators found the remains of Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling in the woods several miles away. Animals had eaten away at their bodies. It was unclear if the men had ever reached the trailer. Shortly after, Jackie Huett's shoes and spine were discovered just 2 miles from the trailer, and his skull was located 100 yards away. Even knowing that the 4 of the 5 men had died in the Sierra, investigators still could not completely explain what had led to their deaths. They still had found no explanation for why the men were there, although they learned that Mathias had friends in the small town of Forbestown, and police believed it is possible that in an attempt to visit them on the way back home, the men may have taken a wrong turn near Orville that put them on the mountain roads. For whatever reason, the men had left the Montego. Instead of going back down the road where they had passed the lodge that Shons later returned to, continued along the road in the direction they was originally going. The day before the men went missing, a USFS Snowcat had gone along the road in the direction to clear snow off the trailer roof, so it would not collapse. It was possible police believed that the group had decided to follow the tracks it had left, through the snowdrifts 4 to 6 feet high, to wherever they led, in the belief that shelter was not too far away. Most likely, Madruga and Sterling died of hypothermia about halfway through the long walk to the trailer. It is assumed that once they had found the trailer, the other 3 broke the window to enter, since it was locked. They may have believed it was private property and feared arrest for theft if they used anything else they had found in there. After Weiher died, or after the others thought he had died, they may have decided to try to get back to civilization by different ways, such as walking overland. The men's families have countless questions about the discovery. How did they get there? Why had they left the car? But there was one question that overshadowed them all. Where was Gary Mathias? To this day, Mathias's body has never been found. His sneakers were discovered in the trailer, suggesting that he had been inside at some point, but no other trace of him has ever turned up. Regarding the case, John Thompson, a special agent for the California Department of Justice, stated no explanations and 1,000 leads every day. You've got 1,000 leads. Investigators were unable to find evidence that a woman and a baby were ever in the mountain roads the night the Yuba County Five disappeared. Regardless, the men's family remained steadfast in their belief that something nefarious occurred that evening. There was a force that made them go up there, said Jack Madruga's mother, Mabel. They wouldn't have fled off the woods like that. A bunch of quail. We know good and well that somebody made them do it. We can't visualize someone getting the upper hand on those 5 men, but we know it must have been. Ted Weiher's sister-in-law says they seen something at the game at the parking lot, hypothesizing that someone killed the men to cover up a crime. They might have seen it and didn't even realize they'd seen it. To this day, the mystery of the Yuba County Five remains unsolved. This presents a frustrating dilemma. Investigators cannot prove a criminal act took place that night, but they cannot explain what happened if one did not. According to the San Francisco Chronicle, the case of the Yuba County Five is still active and continues to haunt the Yuba County Police more than 40 years after. In the words of Jack Beecham, the Yuba County Undersheriff, at the time of the disappearance, the incident remains bizarre as hell. What do you think happened to the 5 boys that evening? Please let me know down in the comments. All we know is this is a really strange case, and one that probably won't be solved without a break in it. Again, I would like to thank Rowan for suggesting this month's video. If you would like a story told, or a case covered, head over to the community tab and look out for the suggestions post. But for now, let me know your theories down below. If you've enjoyed this, please consider leaving a like on the video, and also subscribing for more videos just like this every week. Whether you're at a loss and have to abandon your vehicle, or trudging through the snowy woods, you don't have to be afraid of what's behind you.